like you're implying that when you need to go into that realm of, or that way of trying to find the truth, that there's something about that approach that is misguided. Is that?
Well, I noticed that whenever I have the need to prove or to rationalize, then it's wise to question myself and my own view. And usually that need comes from some kind of conditioning, which is then, in my own definition, not something that is based on truth. So it helps to really just peel it away. You know, it's a little bit like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jiddu Krishnamurti, but he explains very often that if you just observe and you see something that's false, it doesn't mean you have to know the truth, but you can just negate the false part. And by doing that with some rigorousness, then eventually you can assume that you will reach a place of truth. So I try to negate everything that appears to be false, or at least I question it first, and then if I am convinced that it was some false idea or something that is keeping me from truth, then I try to negate it altogether.
Yeah, it's similar to the practices of many yogis. It's instead of trying to find out who you are, a lot of them, as you say, Matcha, is to look at what you are not. And the more you can go through all the things you are not, eventually you will come to nothing, which is essentially the fulcrum which Walter Russell describes, which is the point from which the silence from which everything springs from.
Yeah, silence is the right word. Whenever I found something like that, it gives me a sense of peace and quietude inside. And then, of course, all kinds of other things pop up. But yeah, it is. I think that's true.
Well, I'm envious of all of you. I live with a bunch of mad people around me.
We too.
Well, to sit and I mean, when I'm out in nature, I guess I can say, you know, that's where I feel truth and balance. Around humans, it's insane.
Why are money?
You're breaking up.
Sorry. How about, is this any better?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like bizarro world is what I call it. It's very hard to deal with what's going on lately.
I'm going to stop at this moment and just say that I have started recording because the people have asked to record these, so except if they don't make them, you know, that they can't attend. So is there any objections to recording as we speak? And then another reason is to let people know that we are recording. Is there any objections to recording the meetings?
No.
No.
Nope.
And again, and it's meant for others that can't attend. Okay, so I'm just letting you know that we have started. I actually started a little bit late. We were already talking about truth before I started, but so from now on we're recording. Just let everybody know that that's what's going on.
Yes.
One thing that's being talked about a lot now with some people is that there's multiple truths. You know, this is my truth, that's your truth. I got to speak my truth. Any comments on that in terms of what Walter Russell's saying? Is there one universal truth that Walter Russell is talking about?
Well, like Matcha says, all these ideas of individual truths is essentially just the conditioned mind of, well, I use the word mind because Walter uses the word mind differently, but essentially people's view of their experience is obviously going to be their truth, but it always comes from a place of conditioned factors, really. From birth to death, we are constantly bombarded with other people's ideas. So, as Matcha says, if truth is immovable, it's unchanging. So if both sides can't see it as truth, then again it it cannot be.
And I also think that it's a trap when people are fixed on the idea that everybody creates their own reality and truth. You see that with quite a lot of people, and I think it's a trap that keeps you running in circles around your own, not even perception, but your own mental constructs. It's like the golden calf in the Bible. You know, it's not about that statue. It's the fact that they were starting to worship it as their god or truth. And I think that in the same sense, any mental construct of what is real is a golden calf, and it keeps you away from God, whatever that may be. I was never raised in a culture that had God as a centerpiece, but let's call it God. I think that the moment you start to make a construction of it or a mental framework, then you're already moving yourself away from it. So I think that is also how the warning about this in this story should be explained. But of course, other people may see that differently.
We're only talking about how Walter Russell sees this, or we're talking about how we see reality around us? I just want to verify.
Well, my question that I was bringing up was, you know, I was relating it to the world today in terms of multiple truths and what we hear. And so it was relating Walter Russell's opinion to it. Are we seeing one universal truth, or do we see multiple truths? Because again, Walter doesn't really get into it, at least at this question level, of what truth actually is. He just says it's simple. So I mean, a lot of people could have simple ideas of truth. There could be a lot of simple ideas, and I think when Yannick was talking about, what he called it, I think Bear calls it overlays. We have these overlays, kind of program overlays that have been put on us and put on us and put on us.
The matrix.
Yeah, and those overlays that we have, we form our opinions from those, rather than maybe looking at the truth, right? And as we get into this, we're going to see that what we think, how we think, our knowledge may not be truth, right? So knowledge may not be truth. Truth may come from a different source, but for a lot of us, we think that knowledge is truth.
Yeah, I seem to see so much, deeply brainwashed people that it's difficult to have a conversation with about truth with such people. Nothing against them; they don't mean anything negative, but the conversation just wouldn't go anywhere.
Because I think what Will, you're bringing up is that there's different definitions that we're working off of, and Doug, that's why you can't, if you're starting from a different foundation, you can't really go anywhere.
Well, yeah, well, it's understanding that they're not in that world that they believe they're in, and you're not going to argue with them and tell them they're not.
Yeah,
doesn't work. I tried.
Yeah.
But we also don't have to argue about it. If we see that is how they came to their vision of reality, that's fine as well. And I think that if you want to define truth, that's impossible. It's a little bit like the Taoist approach. If you can name it, it's not that one. So the moment you start to define things or put words to it, then you are already making an abstraction. So it cannot be the truth. It's like pointing your finger at the moon and saying that is the moon. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a sticker or a signpost or anything. It's not it. The same as I cannot explain you how honey tastes if you never put it in your mouth. So I think that the moment you are able to define or describe it, then you're already off.
And I think that's why Walter said here that the way he described it or defined it was that it's just simple.
Yeah, and he also, what was very nice, I'm not sure in which chapter it was, but it was one of the first ones, that he specifically makes a difference between information and knowledge. And I think that's a very important, that was for me a key insight, you know, we are bombarded with information, but to have it as an active awareness of part of your own being, you know, that is when it becomes knowledge for me, that is a big difference.
Thinking about trying to tell people how something is, you know, in a different perspective. I've been thinking about this idea of, and you know, how does somebody get there? I've been thinking about this analogy of like peeling the onion, and everybody has their own individual onion that only they can peel.
Yeah.
And none of us can see what the next, including the, you know, the person themselves, can see what the next layer of that onion will be. But I think somebody who can understand where that person is might be able to give them a tool that would allow them, only them, to peel the onion. You can never peel even that top layer for somebody else. And I think that's what like koans are and things like that. You know, they're like little tools. But it's like a Zen koan. You know, the way the Zen masters ask these, like, you know, if tree falls in the forest. You know, there's all these kind of kitschy ones that are known. But I think when properly applied by like a master who understands the pupil that they're working with, they're probably applied very judiciously in a way that allows that student to then peel the next layer of the onion, you know, and so on until you finally get down. And it kind of goes back to that negation principle idea that you're really just trying to get down and down until the person just sees it for themselves.
Great discussion.
Sees what? Sees your view,
The truth,
or their own view?
Sees what truth is.
Okay.
Yeah.
The truth is a set thing, is what we're saying. That's not an opinion. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
And again, this is, I think, Walter setting the table for us with these first questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's going to enlighten us as we go forward as to what he sees as being the truth. And so, but what I'm trying to do is just get discussion going here in our minds, working and beginning to get into, you know, a different dimension or different space to actually start really gnawing on these things and explore what our current overlays are and how they relate to what Walter's trying to get us to see. So the next question is what insulates humans from this source? And on page 3, it says, we are insulated from source by the electrical conditioned body, which we wrongly think of as the mind. Any comments on that?
Well, Walter describes mind and thinking as completely separate things. Mind being source, i.e. God, whatever you want to call it, and the thinking is the electrical conditions of the universe, the two opposed pressure conditions, i.e. the centripetal pressure versus the centrifugal divergence of the electrical side of things. Sorry if that was a bit too much.
Well, for me, yeah, and I'm a little bit. What I'm kind of feeling right now with Walter is that, you know, we have the sensing and we have the kind of the knowing, right? And our senses, when we see things and touch things and smell things, some of these make our overlays, and we think that we are our body. Right? We think that that self and me is what is, what, you know, like they call them meat, cheese, you know, or spacesuits, whatever you want to call it. That is me. That is me, right? And so we were separated because once we step out and step into our bodies, we begin to think that the physical, right? The physical plane, the matter that we have become is us. Yep. And that's what insulates us, because we've lost the knowledge of source, and we forget that. And we're gonna, you know, as we get farther into these, I think it gets a little bit elaborated a little bit more also.
Yeah, that sounds good. just to be clear, I have very little concept, very little back and forth with people that talk this way. So I'm not. I come from learning, is what I'm getting at. That's what I meant to say. Thank you.
Yeah, we're all where we're supposed to be. So, okay, so any more comments on insulated from source question?
Well, I noticed that there are a lot of these things in the book that then, resonate or whatever with my previous views. Like I explained how I try to approach things to find truth. Then I see this as a confirmation. This confirms that I am actually in the right process, because I'm trying to reverse engineer what he's saying here. And I found a lot of these little confirmations, like, oh, this makes sense. This makes sense. I was doing that already, or I discovered this. And so it's in that sense, it's nice for my ego as well, this book, because it also confirms these little things. So I have to stay aware of that also, but still.
Super. So let's go move on to chapter. Is there any more on that, or we're going to move on to question 4, which is, what 3 characteristics does consciousness express in self? And Walter, the book says omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence. Now, these are also the 3 characteristics that people speak of God about. Any comments on that?
They're also the 3 major sections of the book, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah. We'll get back to them, I think.
Well, when I look at those 3 words, I'm thinking, that God is, God, if we call it God, the source, is in everything. I'm thinking the science is that our body, our whole thing is amazing, so whoever created this and keep creating it, like it's pretty amazing. So I'm thinking the omniscience, which we're going to learn with the electrical, and omnipotence. Well, that's more like everywhere. And omnipresence is when we look inside and in that stillness, I don't know, we sometimes some great insight, but also we feel this peace, Anyway, that's what when I see those 3 words, that's what comes to mind for me.
For me, these are words that you see in other cultures and other teachings also as qualities to every human being. Everybody is able to manifest these 3 things. And you see it in all kinds of literature and teachings and books where it comes back and comes back. So this is, again, some confirmation, or at least interesting statement that, and I believe these are all qualities that we all have in us, and we can all learn to discover and express also. So
it's
just cool.
It's one of the kind of constant things about these other teachings as well, that they're all saying it's us. It's not out there. It's inside us.
Yeah.
Consciousness.
And we are this.
Yeah. Yeah. Consciousness as the foundation. What's that?
Aren't we all part of it all?
Yeah.
Oh, losing it for a second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Tamara, would you like to say anything?
I was just thinking that, I feel like sometimes I don't. It's like I think I understand this, but sometimes I forget that I'm part of it. I mean, even though maybe I know it, maybe what I'm saying is I feel like maybe I could meditate on this more or something, or something. There's something. feel like I haven't paid enough attention for myself now that I'm here seeing this, that the consciousness self is also are these 3 things. if that makes sense. It's cool to see it now, and it's going to be cool to think about it later.
Well, I don't think I was ever taught anywhere in any studies that I was omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent in any study that I've ever taken. So that is eye-opening, right? That these are actually qualities that Walter Russell says that the conscious self possesses.
Yeah, I feel like I'm looking at those three words in particular as like something I'm learning, and I'm learning to understand, but I'm somehow not maybe connecting it to myself enough, you know. So it's cool.
Maybe one thing that we can do in this, because I think you know, one of the ways that you understand things is through perspective shifts. You know, that's just how we understand anything. One of the great things that we can do here as a group is bring in different perspectives through which to see this, because it's very hard to just go zoop right in and like say, oh, there are the words, I get it. It's about, you know, kind of tacking and continuously looking and looking and looking. It's like, I don't know if anybody knows how GPS works, but, you know, with one satellite connection, you don't know where you are anywhere around that. You know, two, then you've reduced your, anyway, once you get enough points of perspective, then it's clear. I don't know if that was the greatest analogy, but it's yeah, let's always try to bring in different, yeah, exactly. Like let's throughout this, referring not just to Walter's ideas, but to other teachings or just observations, I think will be helpful. And then at some point, bam.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, like omniscience, right? If you study Steiner says there is no knowledge but clairvoyance, right? That only by accessing source or accessing clairvoyance or the Akasha, that's where real knowledge is. And he believes that we all have the ability to do that, right? To have clairvoyance, and there's a lot of studies that are being done right now, you know, out there. Thomas Campbell, you know, and so on with meditation. I mean, that's kind of the omnipresence where they're actually doing the relocation, right? Biorelocation, where they're using yeah. And so these things are real, right? I mean, they go ahead tomorrow. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just said I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like I feel like I believe this and I know it. I feel like I'm coming at it from the mind and I don't actually need to, if that makes sense. But actually, no, I do. But yeah, I believe it is what I'm saying. Like it's truth for me and I love it. And I feel like maybe sometimes I forget or I separate, you know.
Again, look at question 3 when you think about coming from the mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I guess that's part of like also, you know, being in this world.
Yeah. And you know, so like I said, there are very real examples today of omniscience and omnipresence, right? Omnipotence, that's a kind of a different animal in itself, right? All powerful. What does that mean? Does that mean all powerful over myself, right? Does it mean all powerful over the world, over other beings? Do we want to be, you know, what is the definition of all powerful? That I think would be a harder question for me to say. If I say it's just over myself, I have no problem, right? To say it's over the world or whatever, it's probably over my world, right? Over. If I think we listen to Bear, he would say that, you know, it's our reality is our mind, right? We create it all. So, how much omnipotence we have may be in how disciplined we are in our mind and our thoughts, since they are waves and they carry and create reality. And I don't want to get too far ahead, but I just kind of priming the pump with that comment.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't think any either of the words. I actually don't even really know what they refer to.
Okay,
Happily.
omniscience means all knowing. So omniscience means I'm all knowing. So I know everything.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying is Steiner says that all knowledge can be known through the Akasha, which is like the ether or what's around us. And that,
yes.
And so we, and there's been things of, when you look at theosophy, I think Giselle can talk about that too with Blavatsky, that a lot of the information that the theosophists got was clairvoyance. They were downloaded a lot of information. Even Walter Russell says he was downloaded information and clairvoyance. So that's omniscience. Omnipresence means you're everywhere. You can be anywhere and everywhere. So that's what I'm saying with some of the, the Stargate programs. I don't know if anybody's seen that with the CIA, where they were doing the remote location. That, they've actually shown that, if it's all true, again, who knows what's true or not, but they have examples of people, being able to astral travel, and be everywhere, be anywhere. I don't know if you can be everywhere. That'd be like, like God truly of, I think you can be anywhere. I don't know if you can be everywhere. Okay. I'd probably be a pretty special being.
That's the idea of Christ, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That he fully elevated up to cosmic consciousness, like full cosmic consciousness.
I guess as well.
Where does he get this stuff? Like, how does he know this? Is what I really mean. It just
clairvoyance.
That at least works, because it just blew me away when I started hearing the things he was saying. Like, how do you know that? And I trusted it as well. I didn't. Just like he says that the Earth came from the sun, and then the moon came from the Earth, and like, where the hell did you get that from? And it's just incredible, beautiful.
I think with these things, since I was a young child, I always somehow knew that this was in our potential to have these qualities, and that somehow, and maybe this is a belief that is inhibiting myself, but that somehow great power comes with great responsibility. And the universe is set up in a way that when you're not able to handle the responsibility yet, then the powers will not flow through you. Mm-hmm. That is an idea I long had. And that is also why I started to seek to remove any inhibiting conditioning or things that I observed about myself that could corrupt me or make me see things in a false light. Or I think that is part of it. And I also saw it in some other teachings that this is not even something you have to try to reach. Just purify yourself, clean yourself of any inhibiting factors, and this will start to flow itself. And by that time, you also will have the insight and the wisdom and the responsibility to handle this. I think this is a very natural something that will just come when you're ripe and ready. And we can actively work on cleaning ourselves up, or we can just stay in blissful ignorance and never get there. But I think it's in that sense, it's all there for us. And maybe we are already subconsciously being led and being guided by these qualities without us even realizing it.
Great.
Some of the gurus who talk about God putting itself under its own spell in order for it to have an experience, but eventually come round and find itself again. And there's a few lines. I don't know if anybody's heard of Muji, and it's in a song that he's written, and it says, "Before the heavens were made and all the stars were placed, we were one inside God's own heart. Don't you remember?" And for me, that is just such a powerful little mantra there, where in a sense we are under our own spells to eventually find what God is again, and that's coming back to what truth is.
I have to say, I've always felt since I'm very, very young that everything is broken. Like something's wrong is how I've always felt. Why can't I float over the sidewalk? When I was 5, I used to get not beat, yelled at. What are you out of your mind? You know, all kinds of things I feel like is being held back in a way. And I think Santos actually says that is what's going on. Mm-hmm. But this is not what we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about Walter Russell right now. Just that's how I've always felt, though. Something is broken that makes it this hard for us to, you know. I think it was Steiner, right, who said in 1920, it's very difficult to be human today. And he blamed materialism in 1850 that started.
And again, it goes back to question 3. We are insulated from source by the electrical conditioned body, which we wrongly think of as mind. That's a key point.
Yes, I have to just understand it though.
Exactly. Okay, that's great. That's great discussion. Thank you. Question number 5. Where must humans put their attention to find the light? From page 8, it says the highest heavens. Any comments on that?
That really jumped out of the page for me. I even marked it with a colored marker. It was amazing when I read it. It was like, oh yeah. I've been falling back so many times. And it was just because I looked back. I should not. Just keep up looking up and then continue, you know. And it made so much sense. It was like, oh, I have to really keep reading this little line. It's an important reminder, because otherwise you go back to level 1, you know. It's like playing a computer game, and each time, bam, you're back to level 1 again. And then you screw up in level 16, and then bam, you're back in level 1 again. You know, it's like failure. Sounds judgmental, but failure should not be an option. You know, it's like what Yoda said, do not try, you know, there is no try. Do or do not. And don't even try or do your best or whatever. No, just do it. You know, just be that process instead of thinking about what it should mean and how it should be defined and everything. Just focus on the process. And it was a really strong one for me, this line.
Anybody else?
Well, for me, to be able to, in the world we're living right now and all the time, I study some reading, you know, spiritual reading every morning. And, you know, I have to always look at what I'm doing every day, like try to keep an eye on, am I thinking the highest that I could, and not getting too caught up with when I'm out there. So, and I find meditation too helps me to connect to the light, I guess, to the highest that I could. And I found it helps. It helps with everything. That's what I do to connect to this light.
For me, so if we look at the word light, Walter Russell uses the word still magnetic light, which essentially just means God. It's the stillness from which everything extends. So the highest heavens for me are basically God.
Yeah, and especially the sentence after the light, you know, when you're trying to get out of the jungle, that you can not for one moment remove your eyes and look back or glimpse back below. That I think is really a very essential one. This one made me laugh, Usually when I stop thinking and just start laughing, that's a sign for me that I have to pay attention.
I don't know how, so, you know, did some drugs in the past, but not a lot. A few years ago, I did ayahuasca. So one time I did it. And it was interesting in a lot of ways. But what I don't know how people feel about that and how it relates to this. I'm still kind of trying to evaluate maybe about what I learned in that. But some of the experiences I didn't understand then at all. And they feel like they're coming back with a new. Oh. Right now before it. Okay, I will. Gosh. This is probably the last participation that I have, and then I'm going to be off to dinner. But there you go, Oscar. Okay. Pardon me, everyone.
Okay.
Where was I? So there was one part of my journey where there was a single point of light at the top of the yurt that we were doing the journey in. And there was a matrix that was overlaid the whole space. And it was almost like a summoning up to that point. And I kept going up, up, up. And it would almost be like I'd run out of steam and then fall down and forget everything that had just happened. And then go into the loop and start to recognize the space and then the light and do it. And, you know, I'd go up and up and up and up again. And then I'd fall down and forget everything. And I must have done this 5, 6, 7 times. And every time I was certain that it was, you know, I'd never heard of Walter Russell, never heard of any of this, and actually did not have much of a spiritual background at all, other than maybe like a basic curiosity, but I never could understand anything. But this light, it felt very clear to me that it was death, but also eternal life. It was, you know, and in reflecting now, it feels like, well, that was source. That was like very clearly source, but I couldn't get there. And at the time, the idea that I kind of reflected on was like, oh, it wasn't my time to die. Although death seemed so peaceful, you know, but it was like, I wasn't scared of it, but it was like, oh, I'm supposed to be here a while longer. But, you know, I forgot about, it's so funny that what a powerful experience it was at the time. And then just forgot about it. And there were lots of other parts of that night that also have been coming back to me as I've been learning this stuff. And I feel like they were little glimpses, you know, and that's what they say that it is. But I guess I'm bringing this up because, like I said at the beginning, not asking for everybody's views on drug use, but it's one other aspect of that night was I became completely convinced that the ayahuasca was a placebo, and that we had all arrived there just by the power of our minds. It was like a certitude that I felt then. And I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking about that more recently. I had forgotten about that aspect of it too. And I've been coming back to that recently and thinking that, gosh, maybe it really is. So I don't know. I don't have a question in there. That's been ringing around in my head just as of recently, and it just seemed relevant to what we're talking about here in some way.
Thank you. Any more comments on the highest heavens or anybody think that that's not correct, that there's something else that we should focus our attention on?
I think Jeremy kind of slipped into number 6 really with that explanation of his story. So maybe we'll just get onto that one.
Okay. So the number 6 is, when will the ascent of man be finished? And on page 9 it says, when all mankind has found the light. And this is also
never.
And this is also a Buddhist teaching, right? I mean, that a lot of the ascended masters come back to help everybody because they believe that that's when mankind will progress, is when all men find the light or find enlightenment, as the Buddhists say. Any comments on that?
I'm not sure they necessarily mean all mankind. It's possible maybe with all that's left. Well, in seriousness.
Mm-hmm. You know,
did you ever follow Dolores Cannon and the crazy stuff that she has discussed? You know, that we absolutely keep coming back, that we choose it. You know, and we may do it a different way the next time until you just get it right. That scares me, actually. To have to keep coming back millions of times.
Like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, that's what life is, it seems. God with amnesia.
Must be hard to be an ascended master. You know, you took the bus, you arrived at your destiny, you're waiting there for everyone to follow, and you're like, oh crap, they didn't get it yet. Let's go back and try to explain it to them, see if we can get some more people on the bus. Not yet. How many millions of years is this going to take, you know?
Yeah, I can't imagine that's if that's the place they're in, then fuck, I'm in trouble. That's, the whole goal is to not come back again.
Maybe it's just cyclical.
Way.
We go through golden ages, we go through dark ages, we go through golden ages, we go through dark ages.
We should just enjoy the ride and laugh about it, and have a good day, you know.
Exactly. This is just God having a dream. Just God having a dream. And we're just all under the spell. That's all.
The illusion part, though, is you know, very important that we know, finally. You know, that we live in a simulation, let's say.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I thought I would never believe that. And then 5 years ago, I started reading some of their books, and you know, their reasoning was moronic. I learned later, but it just, you know, it sure seemed real at that point. That this is someone's running it. God's the operating system, and we're processes in it.
I think a distinction there is that that creates like an externality of God, that like it's somebody from above that's operating it, and actually we're all operating it.
Yeah, I didn't. If I said it that way, that's absolutely not what I meant.
Yeah. But the simulation thing, I mean, I was thinking that before you even said all that, because something about every time I've read that idea that we're in a simulation has made me feel like the way it gets described is the classic way that God is externalized.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like an important kind of drum to beat, you know, and we're going to do it over and over and over again as part of this. It's like it's inside of us all. We are it.
Right, but
That's
we're
right.
also serving a purpose of some kind, each of us. If the purpose, you know, maybe to learn more from this level, I mean, who knows? There's a purpose to it, as we're just one big thing, and we're little parts of that one big thing doing our little, whatever our goal is, whatever our assignment might be.
I think I agree with you there, William. I don't even think there is purpose to any of this other than just to have infinite experiences.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's just what I kind of feel in my heart. That's what it is there's no purpose to ascending or descending, or just some of us will get it, and what happens after that, I mean, I really don't know. But to say there's purpose, I don't even think I agree with that either. It's just, it seems crazy that there would be purpose.
I think of it as like singing. Like we're like learning to sing together. Like we're harmonizing.
Right.
And it's a very large choir, but we're all singing together. And not everybody can sing right, but the more that you do it, you kind of, you get a little better. And some people are fantastic and can carry like a whole part of the choir, right? They lift everybody up, and they give like a, kind of a powerful frequency that we can all resonate with.
Like a tuning fork.
Yeah, maybe all we need to do is expand. Expansion is maybe the goal, to keep things moving, because if I understand it correctly, it's an interplay of expansion and compression. So without expansion, everything stops. So maybe that's all, just keep it moving. And if we're lucky and we are able to find that resonance that you spoke about, like in the choir, then maybe we pop into a new kind of experience, and we have all the fun again, in that experience. But just keep it moving, keep the wheels turning. Maybe that's all that we are doing, and that's all that's necessary, so that we can have all these wonderful, wonderful experiences and challenges and joy.
Yeah, I mean, Walter always says, all the elements of the periodic table will do things cyclically. Hydrogen will become the next element, and that will become the next element, and that will become the next element, etc., 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 and then it will find rest in God again, and then it will start all over again.
Santos has a completely different thoughts about that. I think it's hydrogen, one of them, either hydrogen or helium. One is, the good, and the other one is like the hell, according to him.
So I think we've covered that now. With question 7. So, I mean, Walter Russell definitely thinks that man has a plan, that there is some type of sequence going on here where we're all gonna find the highest, we're gonna find the light, and then we're gonna move on. And this question says, and this is very much like Steiner also, is what planet will be the next repetition for man? And on page 9 it says Venus. Any comments on that?
I actually kind of always thought that somehow maybe we were on a different planet and now we're on Earth, and I wondered about that. So it was really interesting when I read that, and just listening to you talk right now, I think you said the word plan. What's the next one? Are we moving towards the sun? Like, I guess that's what maybe we're moving towards the sun. Like maybe yeah, I was reading, actually, I'm not going to remember, but well, I'm at the part in the book where maybe I shouldn't skip ahead, right? Well, just about where the sun, what will happen to the sun when it's radiating more than, when it starts radiating more, I guess when it's not in balance. And I don't know, I guess I'm just connecting like this question and this answer, Venus, and it's just, it popped into my head. Like, maybe we're moving towards the sun? Maybe that's part of maybe it's part of the plan. I don't know. Just a thought I had.
Yeah, I think the sun is supposed to be like just a portal, not a physical thing. As the planets are next levels. I think. I mean, that's something I've read.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I was thinking of the order of the planets. So, Venus is in, it's Venus, or it's Mars, Venus, Earth. No, I'm sorry. It's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. So if he's saying Venus, that's moving towards the sun. That's kind of why I was thinking that, you know. Yeah.
I think
and this question, you know, has a lot of anthroposophic, which is Steiner's connotations, in which when you listen to Steiner, he talks a lot about mankind being on different planets and different beings taking different shapes and different forms based on density and their choices of what they chose to do. And so there's moon beings coming to Earth, and then Earth, you know, beings going to Venus. So I think it was interesting that he brought this up at this point, showing that there may be a different plan or a different reason for what we're doing now. And if you're into much cosmology, I mean, Venus is the heart planet, right? It's, you know, men are for Mars, women are for Venus, right? And so the Venus energy is more of a loving energy. It's more of a goddess energy. It's more of kind of where we see maybe we're going within the age of Aquarius with more of the divine goddess versus the older patriarchal male energy of Mars. So this may be a transition that we are making as a species into more of a heart-centered than a mind-centered that we currently are in the realm of physicality. So, you know, if you look at some of the meditations, say with heart math and things like that are very heart-focused, that's much more of a Venus type energy. So maybe that's where we are moving towards within our consciousness of being much more heart-centered over mind-centered.
Yeah, I was wondering if I should read these planets as the symbology of energies versus physical locations. What I just noticed is that planet starts with a plan. So maybe the planet is a stepping stone in our lineup of plans.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
it could also be plane, like as in a flat plane. Flat Earth. That's another one.
There's a if anybody's aware that probably some of you guys are, the Electric Universe stuff and the Thunderbolts project. There's a terrific, I thought it was so interesting. It was called Symbols of an Alien Sky. It was a 3-part one, but the first part was just beautiful. And it was kind of mapping some of the observed creations of man through the archaeological records to actual potential electrical occurrences that were happening up in the skies, and a proposal that Mars was actually much closer. I don't want to get too off track with it. Maybe I'll share the link in the Telegram channel, but I thought it was so interesting to get away from this kind of dead universe materialistic view of what's out there and to bring it much closer into I don't even know what some of this stuff is totally new to me. When I saw it, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I'll share it. You guys can watch it if it looks interesting.
Sure. Definitely connect with that. My problem is that I keep thinking toward, instead of discussing Walter Russell's book, the things that jump in my head are, you know, from other places. Like, you know, there's so many planets above, and, you know, which is heaven, and so many below, which is hell. You know, the moon is plasma, and you know, it's a portal for how you get in here from your reincarnation. No, and which has nothing to do with Walter Russell, though. So, but it's so difficult to throw it away, you know, and just, we're talking about this book.
But I think, again, the point to make here is that we're all interconnected, and that we do have relationship to the Earth, and we are going to have relationship with Venus, and we have a relationship with all planets. And as we talk about source, if you read like any Sheldrake or anything like that, that talks about our planet's conscious. And as we get into Walter Russell more, we're going to find out that all things are conscious. They all have the mind of God. And so everything's conscious, and we are all a part of it, So I think that maybe the reason he's throwing this in here is to actually show that we do have relationship, and the planet we're on has a definite relationship to our consciousness. Okay, let's go on to the next.
I gotta drop off, but I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm looking forward to listening to the recording for the rest, and hope to see you all here next week.
Super. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Bye.
Yeah.
So the next one's kind of a big question, right? I mean, this is a question that many people have asked, and why does God exist? And on page 10, it says to think. He is knowing mind. Any comments on that question?
Well, I think Yannick, you said it at the beginning about that he's here for all the experiences, like through us, we experience everything. So it says a knowing mind. So why? Well, we'll discover when we're closer to it, I guess.
It's a very difficult question to answer, really.
It's like asking the sculptor if he can understand the sculptor,
Wow. It's beautiful.
Some things maybe should be left unanswered.
Well, even just that word knowing, we're just trying to figure out what that is. Okay, we're at the beginning of knowing, if you like. So
yeah, but it's a word, so it's an abstraction already.
I know it is. So at the end, as we're on the path, whatever we're doing, we get to understand a bit more. What is this knowing? So
I guess the question can probably be rephrased to what is God's purpose rather than why does God exist? And so the answer to that question is it's God's purpose is to think, and to think his knowing mind. So how to say this? Knowing meaning to know. So Walter describes mind as God. So if God is mind, then from mind is where all ideas are formed, and from those ideas to come into action, he is required to think. And in his definition of think, I'm kind of skipping ahead. He talks about those two sexed lights, which is the compression and expansion, which creates the visible universe that we see.
So it's basically the underlying quality to make everything that we are doing here possible. It's just that's it.
So thinking would be the electrical universe, and what precedes that is idea, and what precedes that is mind. If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Even if you look at it from a day-to-day thing, if you're sat in silence, usually an idea will form, and you require thinking to process that idea, and that thinking then maneuvers these tools to put into action and create. Example, a sculpture, as you talked about earlier on, you have an idea, you think on it, and you use that thinking to drive these tools to create to form the sculpture, essentially. And that's my kind of analogy of how God would sculpt this universe.
But then that is where it becomes fractal, I guess. You have a movement in a movement in a movement, But from that perspective, it can also be logically deducted that we will never know what is behind or the source of that movement, because it's always a repeating pattern in and of itself. So that may be in the sense of being productive with trying to get a better comprehension of our reality, it may be wise to just let that part be then, because that can be something like a labyrinth that you will get stuck in indefinitely.
And again, this question is kind of taken out of context, right? It's just one part of it. And this is taken actually from the Divine Iliad, this question, when it's being quoted here. So here's the actual context that this question comes from. I, the one whole, am knowing mind. I exist to think. All thinking is light of my knowing, but my thinking is not me.
It sounds like it's almost like the ultimate art or something. It's like something about that reminds me of art.
The language Walter Russell used, and when he wrote the Divine Iliad, I don't know if you know this, but it was 39 days he'd written the entire Divine Iliad, and when he'd finished, there was not one grammatical error or spelling mistake anywhere in the text, and it was all like chicken scratchings
when he'd written it. Composing.
Yeah.
And for language like that to come from somebody, it's not from them, it's coming from somewhere else. It's definitely a divine download, if you will. Yeah, I love the Divine Iliad. I love all his works because he just nails it.
I think by reading this, the Divine Iliad that you just talked about, it probably works on us. I mean, for me, it's only my first time. I've just read whatever was in the first 3 chapters. So I think you've read it maybe more than we. I'm just saying it works on us. It's like when you read something and it does, you understand this and then, oh. So anyway, I just think it's one of those writing, when I saw those sections, that's how it felt to me.
Yeah, you were right for the picking.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
It's an interesting observation, Giselle. Huh? Yeah, and because it sounds like a pitchfork. You strike a pitchfork or a tuning fork, and then even there's one standing next to it that's not vibrating yet. If you wait for a moment, and they will start vibrating alike. Maybe this is like a tuning fork. This whole write-up.
Or a choir, as Jeremy said earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's going to talk to us, because I've read other writings like the Yoga Sutras or other books. And when you read enough or you read it later on, I don't know, it's done something. So I just feel when I was looking at these lines that, yeah, it's going to change us, or it's going to change me to understand more, in some fashion. Anyway.
And then the next question is, how many lights of thinking exist? And the answer is 2 sexed lights. And again, this is from the quotes from the Divine Iliad within The Secret of Light.
Oh.
What number did you just read? I'm sorry.
Number 9.
Thanks.
This is, the questions I posted, they were a little bit light on chapter 1, so I kind of added some of these in, these last few, just to beef up chapter 1 a bit. So the 2 sex lights, any comments on what the 2 sex lights are, or how we perceive them?
Yeah, I'd love to understand what that means too.
So I've kind of alluded to it before, but Walter describes them as compression and expansion. So compression being a centripetal action, like a spiral action going inwards, and a centrifugal divergence, which is the spiral extending outward, and these things are happening both at the same time. And we see it in nature all the time. There's male and female, for example, and yeah, and I guess he describes it as the love that attracts these two things is what brings them together to create, essentially.
Is he referring to the masculine and feminine in us?
That's kind of what I get a little confused about.
Me too.
Like,
well, anyway, this is from the Divine Iliad, so we're just at the beginning. But anyway,
it kind of is the masculine and feminine, if you do want to look at it that way. You could look at as expansion as the feminine and compression as the masculine.
But how would be that the different lights of thinking? How does that answer? In other words, if his question was what he wrote, then the answer is, doesn't fit.
Okay.
From what?
This is my logo, because people see my logo that's up there for Akashic Intelligence.
Yep.
These are the two lights.
Oh, yin yang.
Positive, negative, anima, animus. I mean, if you want Jungian terms, right? These are the two lights that we're talking about of creation: radiation, gravitation.
Oh.
Right. This is
Yes.
it. This is it right here. This is the flow. This is actually the
that
sine wave right
the
here.
question.
What's that?
But that's not the question. Was something different, though. No.
No. The question is there are two sex lights. Animal. I mean, these within the yin and the yang. These have. And they have yin and yang are feminine and masculine within the Taoist tradition.
Okay. So the word sex is then masculine and feminism, we're saying.
Yeah. Well, again,
not in the sense that I'm thinking it. I guess it's like more. Yeah, I think I'm understanding better.
As we
not sexual. It's It's
and
right.
And again, this is my understanding. So I mean, like I'm throwing it out there, right? But
yeah, I'm asking. I don't understand that. So that's
and Bear has one of his YouTubes on alphabetic where they talk about, I think it's minerals. He actually brings this up also, because as we get into Walter Russell, these two sex lights, and this is kind of the sine wave, like I said, is that male and female is needed for creation, right? Man and woman make children. I mean, you need plants need two things, right? I mean, so within this, you have the male, you have the female, and mine says AI. I mean, the true symbol has the, dots that are the same. So within all dark, there is some light. Within all light, there is some dark. So these are the two sex lights. So, and this is, throughout a lot of, not just Walter, but like I said, it's in the Taoist tradition. It's within Jungian tradition, anima, animos, this is what it takes for creation is the two sex lights.
I guess a good way to look at it is stars in space. What people generally look at are the stars, but they forget the negative space around them. You cannot see a star without the negative space, just like you cannot see the negative space without the stars. And whilst suns are radiating outwards into space, space is centripetally compressing into suns. So there's this interchange of light expanding and the expanding coming back into light again. Mm-hmm. It's just constant breathing in and out, and it's all happening at once.
Mm-hmm. And it's bi-directional flow both ways.
Yes, correct.
I get confused when I'm reading about like, well, if I'm relating it, like, because I'm one of those lights, we're all one of those lights, right? Mm-hmm. So am I one of the two? Or that's part, I sometimes I can grasp it, but sometimes I can't.
You're both. the answer is you're both. So what we're experiencing right now is essentially a positive, or in other words, a compression. So we're the positive side of, we're more positive than we are negative.
Because we're alive.
Correct. So that there's this balance where when we're born, obviously we're growing, and then there's a point where we reach where we start to regress. From middle age, we go downward and downward to death.
So like we're refocusing.
So we're like compressing up until middle age, and then we're expanding as we get towards the death cycle of life. So there's all this energy that goes in, and as it's going in, there's obviously, as we get to middle age, there's still some decompressing that's happening, but it's happening at such a low rate compared to the compression side of the wave. And as you start to reach middle age and start to die off again, the stuff that gives you life starts to deteriorate, and the death half takes over and is the more dominant of that cycle. So and then we'll die again.
So that's the two sex lights that he's talking about. Is the
it's an analogy really of things. It's not a literal thing, even though you'll see spiral galaxies. The motion in the universe is spiral, and that's how he describes it, is that there's this spiral compression that's happening to create suns, but at the same time there's a centrifugal spiral outwards that's expanding into space. So it's all happening at one speed, but one will be more dominant than the other, and then there'll be a flipping point where that will change.
And so one side of that is maybe the female, or maybe
so expansion is female. So when things are starting to expand, it's a female energy,
and that would be
and male is compression.
Okay, so if you don't, so the female expansion side is more, I think, like the blue colors, the blue, the green, and is it the purple? Is that also part of it? And then
so colors are, yes, yeah. I forget which colors are of which now, to be honest with you, but yeah, that would be the similar thing.
I think just yellow and red and blue. No, that's it.
Well, yes. I think that's how when he's just talking about two colors, right? But I think there's all the colors in the, right? Like there's the
it's spectrum.
Yeah.
Spectrum.
It's like I thought it was black and white, really. That the colors are something that got brought in to play this game on humans. But breaking the energy that's there, the electric field has been, taken over, and it's making it very difficult for us to connect to our true spirit, our true selves.
Well, within the white light, there's all colors.
Excuse me?
I was just saying, within the white light, there are all colors.
Well, I can't argue with that, but I know it's something that Santos had said, that there's only black and white. That the colors, but I'm not sure where the colors come from, because obviously they exist. But he said something about, it's always only black and white. I think related to the two sides, like the yin and the yang.
I'm curious what happens when perfect balance is struck between the two. It seems that everything is moving like in a pulsating manner, as long as they're dancing around each other, or from each other and towards each other, or however you want to describe it. But what happens when they find that moment of perfect balance? Will they nullify each other, or will they become like a void of silence, and at the same time unlimited new creation. I'm trying to, I was looking at it from the perspective of my marriage, and I see that as we are able to find more balance, it seems that we get into a flow of creation. And I'm wondering if this is also happening on this level.
That's interesting, because when I find I'm myself becoming more balanced, it's, there's more creation or beautiful creation, or maybe that's different. I know you're saying something different between man and woman, but it feels true for myself also.
I think we both have these aspects in us, and also there, when balance is found, there's a whole new dimension opening up. So I think this is a little bit like fractal again. This happens on all kinds of levels of existence and creation, and it's a repeating pattern in a repeating pattern. But yeah, like I said, I'm still very interested if it could be that it strikes a perfect moment of balance, and what happens in that moment. So that's fascinates me.
You've reached God at that point. You've reached the fulcrum.
Yeah, but does it then stop to move?
No, it goes into what Walter Russell calls rest. So everything will. So it's a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a bit of a paradox where everything is ultimately balanced, but in this thinking side of this physical side of the universe, it's balanced by being unbalanced. Whereas I was talking about, one will dominate the other more than the other, and that will kind of interchange,
like a constant interplay of seeking balance.
Yes. So it's kind of like having, I'm trying to use an analogy now of a pendulum, for instance. It sits on a fulcrum. So the fulcrum is God, and if you swing the ball is out of balance, but in balance at the same time, because there's something that's keeping it in check all the time. So as a ball swinging this way, there's at the very same time, there's an opposite motion that's happening to create that. And it's a bit like the bow wave. I think he talks about the bow wave. I won't mess it up by trying to explain it, but yeah, there's in this physical universe, there's always a balance happening that you don't always see. So when the boat is moving through the water, at the same time, those bow waves that are created, there is an opposite wave that's happening at the same time, but just one is more dominant than the other, so that it allows the boat to move through the water in one direction. It's so hard to explain. Sorry if I
no, that's okay. These are
that.
Little seeds, and they will start to germinate as we can continue.
But
I think.
Yeah, but ultimate balance would be you've reached God, to then be, you've gone into rest, to then regenerate, to come back into the universe again, to do the play and go through the cycle.
Okay.
If we're looking at it from the elements point of view anyway.
Part of me thinks that also maybe it's you could say it's becoming whole. Like I'm imagining that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, once you've reached God, you're the whole at that point, right?
Yeah.
This experience is like, I guess it's analogous to you have God, which is the light, and then you put a lens, or say we put what's the word?
Prism.
A prism, exactly, in front of the light, and you've just split everything, but it's all the same thing. You've just created a split of that one thing.
That's beautiful. The prism
Yeah,
thing.
cool.
Whoa.
Prism things.
Whoa.
It all comes from the same thing, but just split and then different lenses.
I think that they're in balance all the time, or it fall apart. But I'm confused about that Freud comment you made, though, on the physical body. I'm lost for that. Like 45 something. Was that as a positive thing about Freud?
Who spoke about Freud?
No,
You
me.
mentioned Freud earlier, as Freud says about.
I said Jung.
Young, yeah, the animus and
The anima and the animos of the two.
Not you.
Okay.
It wasn't you who said it.
Yannick spoke about age as in going to middle age and then backwards. Maybe that is what you mean with 45?
Yeah, that's what
Freud,
I was talking about. Yeah, I didn't mention Freud though.
You didn't mention Freud. Good. Thank you.
God.
That's what I'm sitting here the whole time going, huh? Freud?
No.
That's thank you. Sorry.
No, good.
But it's an important part, Yannick, with this middle age metaphor or for example, because that means that if you keep in a state of expansion or in a compression, I think you said that the first part is compression and then the second part is expansion. The longer you can keep in compression, the older you get.
Yeah, what essentially what also is happening though is that, let's talk about a baby, for instance, or let's talk about conception. So when a man is releasing himself, that at the point before he releases himself, there is such an intense energy between two people at that point. This is, that intensity is the compression, and then boom, the sperm and the egg. It's that point in which
spark of life,
the spark of life, and then you create expansion. So at that point from conception, the compression is so intense, it then starts to expand, but the compression is still more dominant than the expansion side, which is generating the life. And you're generating life up until you're in your 40s. So you're generating more life up until your 40s than you are degenerating. But as you reach your middle ages, the degeneration takes over the generation cycle, and that becomes the more dominant as you get older, if that makes sense. So it's like a sine wave. You start at the bottom and then you move. As you start to grow up, you're growing, and then you've peaked, and then you're dying, dead.
That's the body that's dying, though. Life is always alive if it's life. How can it die? It doesn't die.
Yeah, we're talking about the body dying, not consciousness itself. Consciousness obviously will never die. We're just talking about the physical side of the universe.
Because in Steiner, it's all about like 7. Like I was studying that when my daughter was young. There's the first 7, and then like it's always a multiple of 7. So at each stage, psychologically and in the consciousness, we're growing. So even though that body may be going down later on in life, if we keep that connection, learning, curiosity, we grow in wisdom, I guess. So that whole body thing, it's okay. Anyway.
Yeah, that thing on the screen right now, I mean, he explained it really good.
I haven't looked at that yet.
Yeah, this is what Santos was talking about. The green here is actually the heart.
Yes, the 12 little things all around.
And the 12,
and
but this
always works the same way, and it goes both ways. I mean,
And-
yeah.
And so the reason I brought this up, not to, but this is kind of a pictorial description of what we're talking about, with this being the center, we call the 0 point, the balance, and then coming back up and toward the toroidal fields of the wave, of going up, peaking, and then coming back down into the compression. So within this, you have the blue and you have the red that you talked about, with expansion and contraction. So it's a good pictorial, and if you guys get a chance to watch this video.
And what he says also is unbelievable. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. So
he's amazing.
So we've been almost 2 hours in discussion. So would you guys want to call this good? And maybe we'll push the questions to next week, since you've already read it, because I think I'd rather be more organic in our discussion than follow a strict schedule, if that's okay with everybody else.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if that's good for everybody.
Yeah.
It's good.
Okay.
Battery's about to die anyway.
All right. Well, I thank you all for coming. Hey, thank you, Susan, for showing up. Thank
That's
you,
Susan.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Would you like to say anything, Susan, before we?
Oh.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Thank everybody. I will post this to the Akashic Intelligence website, and I think we have you guys have the link to that. If not, I'll post it in the Telegram. And thanks again, everybody. It's just been so fun, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, William.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
New experience for me.
Bye bye.